Welcome to another edition of Minot Matters here at the Dakotan. I am Jonathan Starr. We are continuing our interviews with mayoral candidates. This time we are joined by Josiah Roise. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
A lot of the biggest problem that we've seen so far in your campaign is how to pronounce and spell your last name.
Yeah. Yep. It's the last name is pronounced Royce, just like the car Rolls Royce, but it is spelled differently. Someday, maybe if I got the actual Rolls Royce car, I would have to chisel off their spelling and put it the proper way.
Exactly. They messed up there with all that quality, all the research and development that I'm sure they did. They got that part wrong.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, you are one of the candidates that we know the least about because you haven't campaigned before directly for one of these city positions where a lot of people learn a lot of information about you. So before we jump into some of the hard-hitting questions, why don't we just kick it off by you kind of introducing yourself? Who is Josiah?
So I was born and raised in Minot. Both sides of my family are from the Minot area. My dad grew up in Berthold. My mom grew up in Des Lacs. Both sets of grandparents were here growing up, which was great because I could, ride bicycle to go see my grandparents and stuff, get around pretty easily. I was born and raised here, born at that now kind of creepy looking empty hospital, into a Christian homeschooled family. My family started homeschooling when it was actually illegal in the 80s. Now I wasn't born until, the 90s. Mm-hmm. So by the time I came about, it was legal, so I was kind of born into a rebellious family in that sense. But they're not rebellious to law. They're rebellious to overreach, rebellious to control, right? Unjust control. Mm-hmm. So although it was legalized by the time I came along, it was still ingrained in my family. That it's like if you and Ronald Reagan did say that freedom has to be, fought and defended by each generation. It can't be inherited,
right?
So my parents were, on the front line for freedom back then, and I was raised with that principle.
Absolutely. You've introduced a concept to Minot as being a constitutional mayor. What does that mean to you?
So the premise of that comes from the constitutional sheriff's movement. And I know we're going to talk about this later, probably. So in reference to looking for attorneys' help sometimes. And people say, well, if you consulted a constitutional lawyer, it's like, should there be any other kind?
Okay.
Isn't that what we're supposed to do? That's the rule of law. Mm-hmm. When it comes to legal defense and stuff, if you're being prosecuted by the state, a constitutional lawyer would only make sense. So the constitutional sheriff's movement, I'll explain that, but I'm correlating with the constitutional sheriff's movement because the constitutional sheriffs, their whole premise is that they don't enforce unconstitutional laws, ordinances, mandates. If it conflicts with the Constitution, they won't do it because they swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. As mayor, I'd be doing the same. A primary example is the COVID shutdown in 2020. A lot of people, including myself, were hurt by that financially. I lost my business. I owned a yoga studio downtown, Yoga Fayu. My partner and I lost that business, not because customers were unwilling, not because we were unwilling to stay open, but because we would have been punished by the state, by the city. We'd have been prosecuted for staying open. Mm-hmm. You're afraid of actually... there's that New Jersey gym owner. I won't list his name. I believe it was Ian Smith, actually. Okay. Was his name. Got arrested multiple times just for keeping his gym open. That's unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. We're adults. If he wants to keep his gym open and if his adult customers want to go and partake in his business, that's up to them.
Right.
People can go to Walmart. The strip club stayed open and the gym stayed closed. That didn't make sense. That was infringement. That was government overreach. So had I been the mayor of Minot at that time, I'd have done everything in my power to prevent that. South Dakota's governor, Kristi Noem, I was very proud of her. I was envious that we didn't have a governor like that stood up for the people and said, we're not doing this. You people are adults. Use your best judgment. As a constitutional mayor, that is what I would have done.
Right. So there's times, though, that there has to be rule of law implemented on top of the Constitution. Would you agree with that or not?
If it doesn't conflict with the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
But if it conflicts with the Constitution, it is hereby null and void. The Founding Fathers made that very clear.
Okay. So like something like, let's go very egregious, murder is not addressed in the Constitution, right?
That's common law. That's illegal everywhere. So the Constitution does abide for common law, which I've made references multiple times at city council meetings and other places where I've spoken. Those are even 10 Commandment, issues. And every civilized nation has adopted that common law. I shouldn't say every civilized nation, but, us, Canada, Great Britain and stuff, it's like murder is illegal in all those places.
Right.
Murder is not a constitutionally protected activity. Freedom of speech is, the right to bear arms is. That's the sort of things I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anybody would insinuate that I'm suggesting that murder or theft should be legal.
I'm not trying to insinuate that myself. I'm just seeking clarification on other laws that we have come to know and follow. So on a day-to-day basis, what are you looking to do as mayor to help kind of get this implemented and get this regulated or deregulated?
Well, one thing I would do is work on deregulation of things. Take kind of a magnifying glass or a microscope to the ordinances and laws that are applied here. And like I said, if they are in violation of constitutional right, then it's kind of an easy thing to do, or simple, I should say, maybe not easy. It'd be a shift, in people's expectations and stuff, because we've been born into a system in which the Constitution is largely disregarded.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to be cleaned up. And so getting rid of things, even like the seatbelt laws, when my parents were probably about my age, that wasn't something you could be punished for. And, there's, older vehicles don't even have the actual seatbelt that comes across the shoulder. They just have the lap belt.
Mm-hmm.
That wouldn't pass today, but it's like, why are we doing these additional restrictions? It's nice that the manufacturers make that option, but I shouldn't be forced to do it.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be forced by the invisible gun at the end of the day, that if you don't comply, this is what you're looking at. Tickets, court hearings, and eventually arrest if you don't comply with these things. That's government overreach.
Okay, so where does that end though? So you go seat belts. Well, what about speed limits? Should we have speed limits? What about stoplights? Should we have stoplights? Those are all things that are restricting our freedoms.
Those are things that, for the better flow of traffic, makes sense. If people want to make a case for them that it's inflicting on their freedom to have a stoplight, they can certainly address that. They'd have to sell that pretty good. Traffic systems are designed for multiple reasons. One is safety, and one is, just for the better flow. Speed limits. I'll point this out. You've been to the Twin Cities, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And when you're leaving Twin Cities to head back to North Dakota, speed limit might be 70, and cars are going like 92. And if you're not going 92 to keep up with the flow of traffic, you become a hazard and you endanger yourself. So going with the flow of traffic is something that is just safer in general. And sometimes they're good. You'll pass a cop and it's like, well, there's about 100,000 cars going by, speeding. And so what do? They just leave it alone, which makes sense. The whole point is it should be decriminalized. The punish for profit is what needs to go away, because there's incentive. Like Wyatt Earp, might not have been as much of a hero cop as we think of him as, because he was paid per arrest. He got wealthy as a lawman making arrests because he could punish for profit. Now, was his judgment possibly, skewed by that? That he could say somebody is doing this and he's going to make money off it. That's a conflict of interest. So in regards to the speeding question you have, when my parents were at a time living in Montana, there was not speed limits, at least on the highways. I wasn't alive yet. I'd have to look into what it was for the city, but like I know people in the Minot area that were like Corvette owners and stuff, that back then they'd go 150 down the highway and it wasn't a problem for anybody. Germany does it. My cousin lives over in Germany and drives on the Autobahn all the time. Yeah, it can be done safely. The vehicles are manufactured to go these speeds. People aren't used to it. In the places where people are used to it, like it was in Montana at the time or on the Autobahn today, you look at it and there's not really causing much for problems. It's not like, there's just chaos and vehicles blowing up like in a Hollywood action movie or something. It's not like that. Right. So the decriminalization of something like speeding is what I would be interested in. This Sheriff Richard Mack I keep on referencing supports that. And that's how he ran his department, was if a vehicle's not causing issues, instead of a cop hiding behind a sign and go, I got you going 77 and a 70 with nobody around, it's like, if it's not causing a problem, then don't make a problem of it.
Yeah. I think the biggest place where this might need to be taken care of is in Washburn. I'm kidding. If you ever driven from Minot to Bismarck, Washburn, you have to be extra careful there about speeding. You're
not wrong. It has a Fairview, Montana, Fairview, North Dakota. It's like they put the signs so it goes from like 65, 45, 35, 25, all super close together.
Gotcha.
And if you are not super intent on watching those signs, if you're not hitting the brakes, if you're kind of coasting down,
Right.
you can be in violation. You'll have expensive tickets, and they do that deliberately.
Yeah. So one of the priorities that you've mentioned was combining the sheriff's department and the police department, Minot Police Department.
Yes, merge the departments.
Obviously, this would be a huge transition. A lot of times when this topic gets brought up, people talk about, well, you just can't do that. 2 different budgets and all the different rules that would need to be done in order to make it actually physically be able to happen. But conceptually, why is this important to you?
Well, first off, the police department was not constitutionally founded. It didn't come along until 100 years after the founding of this country. More than 100 years. I'd have to double check that. But the point is, the forefathers didn't put in for a patrolling police force. It does have a different meaning than the sheriff's department. And the history of the sheriffs goes back hundreds, if not maybe even thousands of years, in how they work. And being elected in America especially is what's important. The head of law enforcement is such an important relationship to the people of Minot, to the people of any city. It's so direct. Like, you know, how much do you deal with city council unless you're going to city council meetings? How much do you deal with legislators unless you're partaking in it? You know, and you're going to the Capitol and viewing that. You have potential interactions with the police, with law enforcement on a daily basis. And there's hundreds of things to memorize if you want to avoid that, to memorize and safeguard yourself if you want to avoid that. So right now we don't have a chief of police, and that's not for good reasons, you know.
Right.
I know he resigned, but like he had much of a choice. He'd been investigated, $100,000 investigation, and so now the city council says we'll put Humpty Dumpty back together. We'll try and pick a better one this time, and it's like, you know what, this should really be a decision by the people. Now, of course, the people elect the city council members, but there's too many hoops to jump through. There's too many different steps to get up to that chief of police, and people don't even know who he is. They don't have a say in it, and it affects the people greatly. The sheriff has to reconvince us every 4 years that he's the right guy for the job, and it is a very crucial thing that the people have a say in that. It's crucial that the people understand and know who their sheriff is. Ted Nugent, I saw him at a live podcast down in Florida, and I never forgot, because I hadn't really thought about it too much before seeing him speak on it in 2020 or maybe 2021. And he said the most important election you can take part in, like make sure you show up for, is the sheriff. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I haven't heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
But I started getting more educated on the powers of the sheriff being the highest power in the land. And in modern day society as we know it, they've kind of separated, like, oh, the sheriff's county and the police are municipal, and it's like the sheriff still has jurisdiction over all of it. Mm-hmm. So as far as transferring the police department to the sheriff's department, there's no mess there in terms of jurisdiction. It's really just paper contract and everything to move things over, and it actually would save money,
right,
for the taxpayers of the city, because you're chiseling down all this separation of departments into one. You're merging. And you don't have 2 bosses anymore. You don't have a chief and a sheriff, and multiple departments handling everything, and insurance policies, for both of them and stuff. You're really narrowing it down to one, just making the sheriff's department bigger. Now, why did they do that originally? Why did we ever get a municipal police force? If there was just more officers needed, why did we create a whole new organization, the police organization? Why don't we just add more deputies?
Yeah. I mean, that's a question that would be beyond my scope. I would say this, though. Do you feel, obviously, Ward County, around 80,000 people, City of Minot, around 48,000 people, depending on who you ask. Yeah. Some might even say 50. Do you feel like that's a very huge weight that would be on the Ward County Sheriff's Department if you went and you combine them two?
It certainly adds, responsibility to them, but it's like they're already patrolling in Minot. They already have jurisdiction here. They're already doing stuff. So it's like it's really just adding staff, and it's like if the sheriff can handle it, if he's up to the challenge, great. If he's not, then that's where it comes in point again. Be careful about who you choose for sheriff.
Wouldn't you anticipate there being a lieutenant or a captain, somebody in the leadership structure that would be over the Minot area still, that would essentially be serving as what we now see as the chief of police?
Well, the sheriff can make his own decisions on who he promotes to the positions underneath him,
Right.
and delegate the responsibilities as he sees fit.
Right. But I'm just saying that in an organizational structure, if you have an organization that large, the head's probably not going to be dealing directly with all the Minot activity. So in essence, you'd still have an elected person that had a lot of control over what was going on in Minot. And would you see that as a concern?
Point is, his boss is elected.
Right.
We have a direct contact. We don't have to convince a majority of a city council that, hey, this guy sucks at his job. And in fact, we can petition, just like I petitioned to make this election happen. A lot of people didn't want it to happen. I petitioned. The will of the people was heard. With enough petition signatures out there, the movement happens. If the sheriff is not doing a good job, we can petition to remove him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, right. You could. And I think that's a very low barrier. I mean, when you go and look at the percentages, I think that's something that...
Well, how's that working out for us with the chief of police situation?
Yeah. And let's talk about chief of police. So... who, obviously, right now we don't have the combination of departments. So for leadership, for whatever it is, what are qualities that are needed from the police of chief? I can't say it today. Chief of police.
Have some water. I'm gonna.
Yeah. What are some qualities that are needed from the next leader of the police department, that chief of police, as city staff and city council work to make a decision there?
In my opinion, what I would like to see from that is somebody whose top priority is constitutional rights and freedoms of the people, because that is something that's being trod upon heavily in modern day times. It's more than just COVID 2020. COVID 2020 was the wake-up call that got a lot of people looking into what their rights are, because they thought they had these rights, and then all of a sudden they're being told, put on a mask or you're going to be arrested and taken to jail.
Yeah.
Well, those are things that police departments all over the country enforced, but then some constitutional sheriffs out there said, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
We're not going to go arrest people for not having a mask or not getting vaccinated and going into a business.
Right.
So that would be my top concern, is where do they draw that line in the sand? And remember who they work for. They work for us. They're public servants.
Yeah.
They're supposed to work for the people and for the interest of the people. But, as I've been pursuing this for a while, before the mayor race, I was already making this argument and pushing for this movement.
Right.
And I'm not alone in it. People are slow to speak it publicly because it's taboo, it's controversial, and it's like it's actually just restorative of how things used to be. People are trying to call me crazy, and it's like, okay, so the founding fathers, they were just nuts and off their rocker for not having a bureaucratic police force. I don't think anybody would quite go as far as to say that, but now that we have a bureaucratic police force, what's so nuts about going back to the way that it used to be? I'm yet to hear a good argument against what I'm pushing. But I will say this, like I was saying, as I'm out having these conversations in past years, I'm not the only one that says, and I thank this one guy, a Minot local, when I didn't even bring it up in conversation. I just met the guy and his neighbor. We're chatting, and he said, we shouldn't even have a police department. They're showing me the sheriff's department. I'm like, okay, so I'm not alone in this. That's excellent.
Right.
We had a great conversation about it. But to further on your question, as I asked people over the course of years, if they had to tip the scales 60-40 to whether the police department more so serves the people and their interest or the interests of the government, even the strongest supporters of the police department organization have had to admit to me, yeah, it would tip towards more so serving the interest of the government. That's what needs to be reversed, because all of our government functions are supposed to be of, by, and for the people.
Right.
And so these sheriffs that I know, Sheriff Mack, Sheriff Lamb, are great examples of guys that understand that their job is to serve the people and protect the people, not just from burglaries or carjackings or things like that, but from government overreach. These guys will actually stand in the gap for people. I don't know if you heard about that baby being taken in Bismarck.
Yep.
You must have heard about that.
I've heard top level stuff. We didn't investigate that.
Yeah. Well, it's like, so CPS, gets called because someone doesn't like that you didn't vaccinate your kid, and they'll actually show up with police officers with guns and take your baby by force. And it's like, would you vote for that? Because whether you'd like to vote for that or not, when it comes to the police, you can't. When it comes to the sheriff, you can.
Some of the stuff that you're talking about, even the idea of who they work for, is that at all based off of the culture that perhaps is built up by council and others, and some of the bosses, or I guess even the city manager, some of the bosses that are to the police of chief of police? Would that factor into that at all? I mean, right now we also have an opportunity to combine the city manager and mayor position into one job too, because that would also give the people more say of what's going on in the city.
And that's a fair point, and that's something that could be looked into. One battle at a time, really.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if you're like you said, it's a big shift.
Right.
And I wouldn't recommend doing everything all at once.
Right.
Although I'm all for swift solutions to what is right, that's something that would, I'd be open to looking into.
Yeah. So talking about that, how do you implement this? What kind of timeline are you looking at? Is this something where you get it done and you don't run for a re-election in 1 year, or is this something where you're going to need to run for a re-election or to accomplish? How do you see that working out?
That would largely have to depend on the participation of the other members of city council. How hard they push against it. It might take another election cycle of getting different people in there with the 3 seats that are opening up.
Mm-hmm.
I never go into anything that I dip into to pursue at this level. I don't back out of without giving it my best to try and accomplish the mission. So if it means more terms, then it means more terms.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I think the bigger deal is when is that mission accomplished? You've talked about the fluoride in the water. You've talked about the landfill and having outside people use it. You've talked about changing maybe how snow removal is done. There's been a lot of substantial changes that would go in that might take multiple budget cycles in order to be able to have accomplished, since it seems like a lot of times that's when some of those items would be probably handled, because it would definitely affect revenues.
Certainly, and in order of importance, priorities and stuff. When it comes to snow removal and stuff, I just know that with my experience, having lived in Minot all my life, a lot of the residential, streets and stuff will just be neglected. And while the main streets are done, you don't see any snowplows out doing anything anywhere. And it's like, are they ever going to get over to these streets? Because, I usually had 4-wheel drive vehicles myself, but it's like, then I end up being the guy that goes and pushes all my buddies or cousins or, things like that out of their spot with their little fuel efficient, economical vehicles.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if they would just plow this street. So those are things that I want, to be looked into and examined and weigh the options of more private party bids and stuff to get involved to take care of that. That's not something I have the numbers and everything figured out exactly right now. But those are things I want to look into because, like I said again, the whole point of this system is to serve the people, the best interest and benefit of the people. Yeah. And so the water issue is huge. It's like fluoride. We don't even need to spend any money to stop putting the poison in the water.
Right.
Yeah,
so that's something that could be, but because it seems like a few of the candidates are non-committal about the next run, and that's fine. I'm just kind of curious, are you anticipating that it's going to take a re-election campaign in order to be able to accomplish what you're looking at getting accomplished?
I would like to accomplish it. The top priorities, the water and the transferring of the police over to the sheriff's department. I would like to have that handled in the first term, in the term that I'd be finishing. Yep. But if it's not doable in that time frame, then I would certainly be compelled to rerun.
Very good.
And I have spoken to county commissioners, to some of them, about this plan, and they're for it.
Gotcha.
Regarding the transferring of the police to the county.
Very good. So let's talk about a couple things that's more personal to you. One of them is, and we've talked about the police, there is a lawsuit that you have currently against the city directed about in engagement with some of the police of Minot, the Minot Police Department. Obviously, you're not going to comment much directly about the lawsuit because it's ongoing.
It'd be unadvisable, yes.
Right. But do you feel like this is a conflict of interest as you, if elected, you're going to be in the mayor's spot representing Minot, and then you'd also be opposing them as with a lawsuit against the city?
As far as I've looked into it on the legal basis, I couldn't find that it was a conflict of interest. But either way, it had to be done because, like I was running out of time. There's a statute of limitations on these things.
Yep.
And so as far as I could research, it wasn't a done deal. But it's like, let's just say if it did disqualify me from the election, well, then I can always rerun, but I can't extend that statute of limitations.
Yeah.
And something that I personally, since you said it is a personal deal, personally have a struggle dealing with is injustice.
Right.
A complete violation of somebody's rights is an injustice. And when that was done, not only to me, but those around me, family members and others that were afflicted by these events, it's not something I can just sweep under the rug and discount. One reason it took so long for me to get to, well, there's multiple reasons. It takes so long to get around to it. Yeah, a lot of research. It's a lot of work to file those lawsuits. And then there's factors, and I've spoken at the city council about this, and I did even tell just a brief summary of the stories of those things, and I requested that the city council members submit a investigation request by BCI on these matters. And I've asked them even personally, like off the record, outside of city council. I've asked numerous sources because BCI, I went to them directly, and they said, sorry, you have to get like a city councilman or a law enforcement officer or somebody that's in an elected position of government or law enforcement to do this. And I've even asked, I think, one or two sheriffs, and nobody so much as even calls me back.
Yeah. And
so going to city councilmen in person and getting no action there, addressing it to the city council publicly, on camera before the eyes of the city and God
the eyes
himself.
of the world. Yeah.
Yeah. And still no action. And it's a dark place to be when it's like, who does stand up for your rights?
Yeah.
You do it alone, you get slapped down pretty hard. And like I said at city council, people are afraid to come forward with these things for the exact reason that we're talking about it now, because then it's public, you're criticized, you're ostracized, and people like to take sides without even looking at the information. People like to make presumptions, and we're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. And when it comes to you versus law enforcement versus the state, prosecuted in court, even every defense attorney that I've consulted with and hired has told me, you are guilty until proven innocent. Yeah.
So another situation that has came up or has come to light is one where you were considered a fugitive from justice in an arrest, I believe is in Burleigh County. And it involves something all the way in Florida, in one of the counties in Florida. Maybe provide some context or kind of just address that situation there.
I appreciate you bringing that up. So the fugitive from justice thing kind of got a laugh out of me because I was working down in Florida after a hurricane, and I was helping some friends and stuff with their hurricane damage. And the arrest, I might as well just tell you, it's like, I think I posted it online too. The arrest was for resisting officer without violence. I'd never heard of such a thing. And this is one reason that I speak about this as a constitutional mayor. It's like they keep on adding new laws. What was your right 8 months ago can now get you arrested. So something that throughout the years I've practiced is like, if they order you out of the vehicle, you ask, like, well, do you have probable cause to get me out of the vehicle? It's like, I will comply with everything that I have to, but whatever rights that I do have, I'm going to hold on to those. Thank you very much. Yeah. Like, so when they say, do you mind if I search your vehicle? Well, yes, I do mind. I'd rather you don't. It has nothing to do with, people might say like, well, you got nothing to hide. It's like, I also, what color is your underwear? It's like, that's freaking private. It's not about hiding it, but I have my right to privacy. And we have those constitutional amendments for a reason. We have the Bill of Rights, and it's become such a negative stigma that when you stand up for your rights, you're being uncooperative, or you're difficult, you're being disrespectful. It's like, no, it's disrespectful to try to usurp another's rights, to exert authority beyond what is your authority and infringe on somebody's rights. That's the disrespect. So, when I just ask these questions, it gets me arrested. When I ask, why do you want me out of the vehicle? Because I said so. I'm like, well, that's not a legal reason. What's your legal reason for asking me out of the vehicle? And that was it. They just opened the door and pulled me out and arrested me. So that was in Charlotte County, Florida.
Right.
Now, as far as how that pertains to up here, and according to my defense attorney, it's a very common practice. They will accidentally get the wrong address to send your court papers to, although they had all my documents. They had my address fully. I just didn't get notice of a court date, a court hearing. And so without the notice of it, of course, I wasn't there. Mm-hmm. I wasn't aware of it being scheduled yet. I hadn't heard anything. They didn't send the mail, my court notice to the proper address. And so then I was listed as a fugitive from justice, which is hilarious because fugitive from justice makes it sound like I ran. It's like, you guys didn't communicate with me properly, and that's documented. The judge did take that into consideration later, but that does nothing for this story being out there. That it's like, you guys sent an address to the wrong thing. Now, even when I consulted with them and with my attorney, he said, well, you're up in North Dakota. That warrant's no good outside of Florida, so don't worry about it. When I called the courthouse, they said, well, you just set an appointment like on a Zoom hearing for the court. Tell the judge what happened, and then they'll drop the warrant. And I said, in the meantime, I've got a warrant out there. And she said, yes, but it's not going to get you arrested outside of Florida. Mm-hmm. If anything, they just hold you. They'll just look at what's your warrant for. Okay, missed a court hearing. It's not a felony. It's not anything like that, and it's on the courts. It's their fault anyway. But that's not how Burleigh County Sheriff's Department saw it. When they scanned my plate, no speeding violation or anything. They just scan my plate, and the warrant pops up. Cop freaks out, says, you're under arrest and stuff. And I'm like, what for? And he said, you have a warrant. I said, okay, that's for Florida. And he didn't agree. That landed me in jail for 9 days. Mm-hmm. 9 days in the Burleigh County Jail. So you mentioned having seen a mugshot. I probably didn't look too happy in that mugshot. And, I wasn't pretending. I was not happy about that.
Right, yeah. I'm sure.
So that's their negligence, and look where that gets us. All because, not because I wasn't following the law, but because those enforcing it are not following the law. And that wraps back around to the constitutional premise. A constitutional sheriff, or even just somebody that's better educated. Every attorney I talked to after that said, well, it's even if you were guilty, even if you meant to miss court, he said on a misdemeanor warrant, they cannot go outside of the state of Florida. They can't come up and get me here.
Very interesting there. One of the things that's going to happen if you're elected as mayor is it's a very transparent role where you live in a fishbowl, as it's been said. How are you going to is that going to affect you? Are you ready for that?
I'm sure it affects everybody to a certain extent. I might brush my hair a little more often to avoid, because I'm seeing now that the microscopic criticism is just, silly. It's like, I wish more criticism would be merit-based. Meritocracy is something I promote. I've heard it criticized that, he's too young to run for office and things like that. It's like, well, not according to the law. If I was too young to run for office, that'd be, in writing somewhere. Yeah. But, things should be more merit-based. I'm not concerned about the transparency of things because although I love my right to privacy, I'm not afraid or ashamed of who I am or anything of that nature. I don't feel the need to cut my hair.
Makes sense. What a big problem. Actually, let's go here. So transparency. One of the things that we've seen up, and it's the crazy things that people find, and they say, "Do you even live in Minot?" So do you even live in Minot? And it's one of the questions that people ask. They say that you live in Bismarck or something.
Oh, I'm in Bismarck a lot for work. Yeah. So my business is. Can I even name drop my business?
Yeah, you can. Go ahead.
All right, Stormtroopers LLC. I'm a gutter guy.
Yeah.
I grew up in the I came right into the rain gutter business as a teenager. Mm-hmm. My uncle owned and ran Gowan Rain Gutter,
Gotcha.
That was in business here it's still in business. He sold it, but it's still in business for, like 40 something years now.
Yeah.
And so I grew up doing seamless rain gutter.
Right.
And when I was a small kid, what got my older brothers, I have 3 older brothers that are all gutter business owners as well. And what really got us into it, working for Uncle Dave, I suppose, was big hailstorm that we had in Minot. I know you mentioned you didn't live here back then, but I think it was 1995. Softball-sized hail falling from the sky. I thought it was the coolest thing. I looked forward to, I was like 4 years old. I'm like, I can't wait for this to happen again. It never did.
Yeah.
So it hailed out Minot and created all kinds of stir for work. That's when my teenage brothers started working for my uncle, and so on and so forth. We all got into it. And Bismarck gets hailed like every 2 years, like almost like clockwork. It gets hailed all the time. So the low-hanging fruit. I do work and stuff in the Minot area, but I'll just be roommates with somebody in Bismarck, just a few $100 a month to just stay at somebody's house, and I'll go there and I'll work for weeks at a time.
Gotcha. But you still live in Minot.
I've always been a Minot resident, with the exception of, because I've been a storm chaser for a long time. The Stormtroopers business name came from the nature of that. It's like, yes, I'm a local business owner, but I'll chase the work. And the reason I really started doing that too was large in part to the oil boom dying off.
Gotcha.
New construction here was raging, and it was awesome how much work there was. And then when the oil boom tanked and the work really slowed down, it was either take a major pay cut, or go find the work where it is.
Yep.
So Bismarck gets hail, or places like that get hail. So Florida. Hurricanes bring me down to Florida.
Right. Yep, makes sense. Very good. So another question for you is this. There's a problem in Minot, and that is voter turnout, citizen engagement, stuff like that. That's something that is considered a problem by those involved. Most recent election, just under 2,000 people voted. Cost per voter might be like close to $10 per vote, which is crazy. How does Minot get better engagement with the residents in these issues?
Honestly, and this is just a joke for the record, but if you actually charge the voters $10 per vote, you might have a better turnout, because people seem to associate paying with value of something. You say there's a car show in the park, and free hot dogs and burgers.
Yeah.
We show up. You say there's a food truck gathering and a car show, and those food trucks can be plenty expensive, if they want to be, and you get a huge turnout. It's crazy. So, but as far as getting people to turn out,
and this time it was going to cost them. It potentially cost them because of what happened with the vote. Well, it cost them to vote, but with the 0.5% sales tax going up, that's going to cost them at the cash register.
Yeah.
But how do we?
It went down.
What's that?
It was voted down, though.
It was voted down.
Yep.
So first question, though, how do we increase the engagement?
In my opinion, I can attest in my history in Minot, I'm guilty of it as well. Not prioritizing, like once I was 18 and I could vote, I would definitely show up for the big ones.
Yep.
The governor, the presidential race, things like that. But some of the municipal city votes, one thing is the outreach is really not that good. It's like I think the advertising should be better, because as it is, look at the turnout for I don't know how many, you might know how many people turn up to vote for that sales tax.
Yeah, for the sales tax one is 1933.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, in all fairness, I'm so busy with everything I had going on, I didn't even become aware of it until the day before. And then I started spreading the word, but it's like I didn't know that it was right then.
Yeah.
I knew it was this summer sometime, but so the advertising could be better. But also the people need to believe that it matters. And so a lot of times what they see in elections, in my own experience and my friends and family, what we talk about is, especially with small elections, because there's no party, affiliation. It's like I promote myself as a Christian conservative, but it's not like you're not running on the Republican ticket.
Right. Yep.
And so it's like people aren't all that motivated. They vote for the sheriff, and it's like, I don't know anything about him. Vote for this council member, that council. It's like, don't know anything about him. So I think they're not very motivated to show up, because they're just kind of showing up to roll the dice. And so I think a good way to outreach is it's up to the candidates largely. It's up to how they promote, but it's also up to making a clear message that if I'm elected, what I will do. And I'm trying to do my best to let people know what my platform is and what my intent is. I don't want any to vote for me because of name recognition, because they knew my brother or something like that. I don't even want any endorsements that way. I wouldn't mind campaign contributions for that sort of thing. It's all useful. But if somebody endorses me or votes for me, I would prefer that they really know what it is I'm intending, especially because I don't want to get in there and then have somebody go, "Oh, well, geez, I didn't know you were going to do this." Good or bad, it's like I'm not trying to fool anybody or pull anything off here.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about the actual issue that was voted on. This is a big issue: budget items, property tax, sales tax. How do you see this playing out? What do we do with property taxes? Obviously, the city's going to be affected heavily by a 3% cap. They can't go above that due to the regulations put in by the state. And then sales tax, 7.5%. We're already getting pretty high.
Yeah.
What's the best way to manage these growing costs that we're seeing as a city?
I'm glad you asked. In my view, I'll put it to you this way, a little analogy, if you don't mind. If you're going to send your kids to the movie theater, and the movie, costs roughly $15, $16, and you send them with a $50 bill. And then when they come back, there's no change. Because, man, did they get popcorn and drinks?
$5.
Yeah, all that stuff. And they come back with no money. And so the next time they go to the theater and you send them $50 again, what are you expecting? Now, if you start budgeting down, if you start going, you know what? Maybe I'll be a little generous and send $20 for the kid to get in,
right,
and he can make do with that, whatever he can. But this abundance needs to go away. When it comes to the taxes, I was a supporter of Measure 4. I wanted to abolish property tax in North Dakota. It's not right. And like my family homesteaded on my dad's side, homesteaded in North Dakota in the 1800s. We're still paying property tax on that homesteaded land from the 1800s. When has that ever paid off?
Yeah.
It's like, it's wrong. It's wrong that you're renting from the government on your property.
Yeah.
And it's wrong that even when you pass on that inheritance then to the next generation, when people die and they try to pass on their land, a lot of people have to sell it because they can't afford the taxes on the inherited land. And they have to get rid of it. It's sad. It's not right. It's government overreach. So how that pertains to the taxes you're asking about, as taxes keep going up, and I'm fighting to keep them down. I'm fighting to keep them down and lower them. What I would have to suggest and insist upon is that we play tighter with the budget. Go to the movie. Don't get the popcorn. Don't get the drinks. I'm not literally cursing people for getting popcorn and drinks at the movie theater. Go have your concessions. But on the city level, stop being so.
Yeah.
It's not generous when it's somebody else's money.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So you need to play tighter. You need to. A good example of that is the $75 million bid for a new police station. That's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And expanding the size of the police force and adding more police officers when our population isn't growing. I mentioned at a city council meeting that I had that conversation with Senate Majority Leader David Hogue, and he was unaware of it too. That's another thing that I'll go off on a side tangent here. As mayor, I would want to do anything that we're doing. I want to talk about it to the newspaper. I want to do a press release with you or the news crews in town and invite people. It's like, this is what we're looking to do. If you have an issue with that or if you support it, either way, please come to the next city council meeting and talk to us about it. Like, let us know how you feel about it, because we're going to move forward unless you can point out something. I want everybody on the same team. It's like, let's talk about it as a city, because just because you're not in leadership doesn't mean that you haven't spotted something that we haven't spotted, an issue with that. Yeah. Whether it be a constitutional confliction or any other issue that could be raised, it's like, I'll entertain any question, any concern.
Right.
But the city needs to stop spending so much goddamn money on growing the size of our government when our population isn't growing. Like David Hogue said, Minot's population is flatlined. And so to add to that, I said, right, so when you're growing the size of the government and you're not growing the size of the city with it, if it's unequal, you are further imbalancing the power dynamic of the government over the people.
So you talk about stagnation, and we could go down that of how to create economic growth and stuff like that. But we have a huge item on our balance sheet for the next many years, and that's flood control. And this is something that affects a lot of Minot people. And one thing you can do is just say, let's just stop. And that's a good way to get a lot of people upset with you. How do we manage this for the next 20 years? However long it's going to take. It's already taken a long time. How do we continue to manage this?
Well, I'll reference Ben Shapiro with this. I think the government, really sucks at everything. So the less that they have to do with things, the better. The Minot flood, I do remember a couple of things about the flood is it did show the magic of Minot in terms of the community.
Right.
I'm so proud of the people. My parents' house was flooded, and many other people, and the way that people pulled together and helped each other was amazing. And you know what it showed? That the people, when they bind together, are more effective than the government. And I know that's a not direct answer to your question, but what I'm getting at is with concerns like this, more involvement from the people does make things a lot better. Yeah. I would like to do a survey on what the people feel should be done about the flood walls and stuff. I can have my opinions and stuff. You're right. It is a heavy burden to make that decision. People will be upset on both sides.
Right.
Not to be too technical about it, but it's like, I'd like to hear the vote on that because I know that the funding isn't, it comes from multiple sources. If it was directly on the people of Minot, I'd say absolutely not. No way.
Right. Yeah.
But having a further understanding of where those funds are allotted from, I know some of them are state and federal. So I would have to have those numbers in front of me to really try and balance it out. Mike Blessum has been amazing with everything he's done regarding the numbers and the budget for things. That's one of the conversations I'm looking forward to having with him is his opinion on this flood wall situation and how it's looking. Because I just don't have the numbers in front of me.
Right.
And I'd like to, but like I said, one issue at a time for the things that I know I can definitely do as mayor. The flood has cost everybody dearly. And one thing that really upsets me about it is when people lose their freedom of choice. Mm-hmm. So my older brother, owned rental property on Burdick Expressway, really close to the fairgrounds. And he had already spent a whole bunch of money fixing up this duplex, this rental, which used to belong to my grandfather way back in the 80s, I think. And it's like, he just didn't even have the option. And it's like, again, because they're saying, well, nope, you can't stay here. Nobody can stay here. And I think that's not the government's call. I don't like eminent domain. I don't like that they go, well, in case we goof up and it floods again. It's like, right, well, nobody died before. Everybody got out. It sucks. It was their loss. But have you ever seen those signs, maybe at a beach or pool, that says swim at your own risk?
Yeah.
When it comes to being in a flooded zone, like on Burdick Expressway, the State Fair Center is still there. That brand new grandstand that I helped build was, in the water, and it's fine. It's all still there. My brother's building was the last one to leave that street, and he had it moved rather than torn down, and he put it up at a different location in Surrey. He had it moved. But my point is, if my brother, the property owner who's at risk, wanted to leave his house there, his duplex there, and if the renters or next buyers or whoever wanted to buy a house knowing it's in the flood zone, that is on them. They are adults. That's the seatbelt thing again. Mm-hmm. So it's like I'm against, and look what that cost. That was taxpayer dollars that had to do the buyout, not at a very fair price, by the way.
But that's also going to create a problem with the housing in Minot because it's going to be very expensive to live in those zones. And already we get close to as many houses as we need more housing development being done. And builders say it's very expensive to develop in Minot. It's kind of a whole conundrum.
It is expensive to develop in Minot, which is why I'm saying for all the people that already spent the money fixing up their houses in the flood zones, only to years later find out, oh, nope, now it's all for nothing because we have to leave. That didn't do the government or the people any favors. Mm-hmm. That was just money out the window.
Yeah.
Blown away.
We're coming to the end here, but if you're elected to council, you're the deciding vote on 2 votes right now that are tabled until after. One of them's Flock. Just 20-second rundown. What are you doing there? I know you've already mentioned a lot on this.
Yeah, I've been at city council numerous times in strong opposition to Flock. I agree wholeheartedly with Mike Blessum when he said that, it's the civil liberties violation here and the risk of abuse is too great. They already do it with the license plate readers that are on the cars. You can research all kinds of stories about people being stalked or women being harassed and stuff like that, because license plate readers can pull up the picture and they, like I spoke about sexual violations against women. It's like this stuff can be abused, and you can try to write good policy to punish that abuse. But like Mike Blesson pointed out, the abuse has already taken place. You can't undo that. And furthermore, when my opponent Rob Fuller said, but the police need this, my counter to that is that, sure, maybe the police need this. The people do not. Who do we work for? Work for the people in Minot.
Yeah. Second one is liquor licenses. What are we doing there?
Fundamentally, I hear the argument when people say, like, well, if I had to pay $100,000 for my liquor license, the next guy should too. But the fact is, one wrong doesn't justify another one. I don't like the government. Again, that's the same thing about like seatbelts and everything. Why is the government interfering with this with private business? When it comes to a construction contractor, for example, if you wanted me to put on a roof for you, I don't see why the government needs to get in the way of that. Your insurance company can. They've got some skin in the game. But when the government says, hold on, you need our approval, you need a builder's permit, and we need to check your license and all that stuff, it's not for the benefit of the consumer or the contractor. It's only a tax. It's a benefit for the government. They don't even make sure that anybody does a good job, really. That's up to like private inspectors and things like that. So it doesn't benefit the people. And so the liquor license thing, if people want to stay open until 3 a.m. instead of 1 or 2 a.m., the bars and stuff, for example, why should the city have the right to say, no, I actually think that your private business that you paid for should close at 1. So that's my will. It's inappropriate. And the flock system is also an unnecessary expense. And like I said at City Council, if you're that concerned, you can put tracking devices on your cars, on your kids, and everything, and have it hooked up right to your phone, and take that responsibility, for yourself as a parent if you want, but don't put it on me.
Very good. Well, I appreciate you coming on today, talking about your run. Any last words for people watching? Something for them to consider as they make the decision of whom to vote for, and how they can support you or get to know more about you.
Yes, thank you for asking. So my website is constitutionalmayor.com. I'd encourage everybody to go check that out and get a look at it, as well as the social media page. We're in the baby phase right now of the social media stuff because I only just added those members to my team to run that part. I've been busy with the other aspects of the job. And I'd like to point out for people to consider that if you are an advocate for any of my opponents and you believe in them and what they're going to do, the good news is they're already there. They're already on city council. They already have a seat. They already have the power, to do whatever it is that they would say that they would do. The mayor of Minot, like you said, having a city manager, the mayor position is not really all that grand in comparison. It's not much of a step up from city councilman, if at all. And so what I'd like people to consider, as I point out, is that just the logic of things. I petitioned for this election so that the people of Minot would have a choice in the 7th member of city council, as we're sitting with 6 right now. I wanted the people to be able to choose. Everyone was behind that. If you elect any of the other candidates other than myself, since they're already on city council, all you're accomplishing is making sure that I'm not the 7th member of the city council, and that they get to roll the dice later and choose somebody that they all have to agree to, of which we have no control and no knowledge currently. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to an actual election, if you want to know what you're getting, I'm your ticket, because I'm the only one that you'd be electing. Any of my opponents get elected, and it's a roll of the dice, literally. 6-sided cube. It's 6 of them have to choose somebody. So I'd like everyone to consider that.
Very good. Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking today, and best of luck in the rest of your campaign.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. This has been an edition of Minot Matters here at the Dakotan, where we are going to be interviewing every single one of the mayoral candidates. Looking forward to those interviews as they come out. Be sure to like and subscribe. Become part of the Dakotan community. Thanks for watching today's episode. Have a great rest of your day.